I am so happy to be here with my guest today. She is a friend and someone I met a couple years ago when we were working on food equity work together in the Chicagoland area. I'm so happy today to have my guest, Eliana Pinilla. She is the Partnerships Director of the Great Lakes region at the Common Market. And here she is. Eliana, hi.
Hey Amy, how are you? I'm happy to be here. Excited to have this conversation.
I'm so happy to be here with you. Every time we worked together on the Good Food and Healthcare Project, you were always just such a beautiful ray of sunshine and light
Oh,
and energy. And I always just felt my energy rising when I was with you. So I am very excited. I think our listeners should, settle in because it's going to be a lot of energy today. A lot of goodness.
yeah, it's a good energy for this time of the year. So hopefully we can
Yes.
inject some excitement and hope and enthusiasm, right,
Yes.
for this work.
Yes, exactly. And when I think of you, I think of that delicious lavender lemonade that we had. It's always, I
Oh
do this. I
gosh,
think of people in terms of like what we ate and drank
yes,
together. Yeah. And
yes.
that lavender lemonade we had in like the middle of summer, it was like 100 degrees. And I think
Yes.
I actually overdid it. I remember coming home like not feeling totally great because that lemonade was so good. I drank so much. But do you remember that lemonade?
It's memorable. I think I've developed a thing for this kind of like herbal infusions in unlikely places.
Right.
Recently I made like this sage peppercorn simple syrup for coffee with
Ooh,
maple syrup. So I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm here for the cardamom rolls, the lavenders, the sage, like
yes.
all for it. And I do remember people in the context of food and music. Those are the two things. I feel
Oh,
like there's always like a soundtrack to a season. Absolutely.
really? So, like, you
Yeah.
have a song, not necessarily like a song that makes you think of that person, but just like the season you were going through in your life.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love
Yes.
that.
Yes. There's always, I feel like, just kind of like my own main character, right?
Yes, you are the main
In my
character.
mind.
Yes, yes.
So I do have a love for music and a love for food, and those two things combine well in my memory bank as well.
I love that. Okay, so let's get to it. Tell me about the common market and tell me
Mhm.
about your career, your path towards the common market.
Well, so Common Market, it's a nonprofit distributor, and we are in a mission to improve the wealth and health of the
Hmm,
regions and
hmm.
economies that we're a part of, specifically focused in connecting institutions. So we're talking about higher education, we're talking about schools, we're talking about your corporate cafeterias, your hospitals, your community-based organizations. We connect them with the best of the region. So like your growers and your institutions who are going to be the folks that we're going to connect, right? But
Hmm.
also the individuals around it, like the community-based organizations, the communities that have been doing this work for a long time. So I joined in the last 3 years, back in October 2021. But Hailey and Tatiana are founders. They started this work in 2008 as a grassroots organization in Philadelphia, and they had actually like a urban garden, and they had nutrition education, and they were, you know, trying to answer this question of like, how can we, amplify this impact? The answer to that came as they got to see growers just outside of Philadelphia bringing their perfectly wonderful crops to auctions because they couldn't find other
Hmm.
places where
Oh,
to bring this
wow.
great food. So they said, like, what if we were able to find places for it through institutional markets? And so coming into Chicago, it was a little bit of like that um, understanding of the ecosystems. There's people that have been doing this for far
Hmm.
longer than I have here in the region. And so it's like, how do we, step into that thoughtfully,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not trying to overrun others people's work, but like, amplify what is already there. How do we come into thoughtfully into this space of all the work that already exists? So But yeah, that's the brass tacks, right?
Yes.
Of the work.
That's what I loved. I noticed and loved about working with you was you were always so community centered when we interacted. And I always noticed how you did say, like, who is here first, who is doing the work here first, and how can we join in what they were doing. And, that's so important when you're doing work like this, especially when you're going into a new city or a new neighborhood or a new space, to say, like, who are the people and the organizations already doing good there, and how can we join, how can we amplify, how can we support, how can we advance, but not like coming in and taking over. And that's what I love about working with you and your approach even.
I think like that's the fundamentals of this work, right? Connecting as humans, as folks that have like the same goal is like, and especially when we are in this food system space, is like our ultimate goal is like, how can we feed people better? How can we feed them well? How can we feed them with like a little bit of understanding, having that agency, that sovereignty in the work, that dignity, right? So I think it's like coming with that common goal, and that's that's all that we're about in our work.
I love that. It's so important to think about the common goal, and just like in my experience in just a couple of years working in the food space in Chicago, there are so many different roles and there's so many different parts to making food more accessible and equitable for all. And there's a role for all of us. And so if you're not like geared towards partnerships and collaboration and kindness and that human connection, just maybe, maybe don't join work, where you're trying to make things more equitable for all. But I think that's what's so beautiful about it, is there's a role for everyone, and it's going to take everyone to make it better. And so you have to enter that with kindness and connection. I love that. Listen, I think I have been watching too much Shark Tank at night. Do you ever watch Shark Tank?
Yes. I think that, and I've been following some actually like food systems people that have gone into Shark.
Right? It used to stress me out, but now it's like my late night calming show. I cannot explain. That makes no sense to me, but it's very
calming show.
I think it's because it's like there's like a structure to every episode. Actually, I think that's what it is. But anyway, I'm learning so much in Shark Tank, and I feel like the one thing I'm learning is most of the companies are either like inventing a new product or a new way of doing things, a new service, in order to solve a problem that they see. And they have come up with an idea or a way to, manage that problem better. And so I'm curious, like when you think about the common market, like what is the problem that you all see that you're trying to solve in the work that you do at the common market?
The primary piece is access to good food. So like from the consumer side, like access to more nutritious food into our institutions, being like your school cafeterias, your college cafeterias. There is an opportunity to improve the quality of the products that are used to make meals in those spaces. And so the theory changes that by improving the quality of it, so does that echoes, that ripples into your like health outcomes. So when you're talking about like specifically vulnerable communities, like it is definitely a game changer. The second part to this was made more apparent during the pandemic when, remember, seeing like people throwing truckloads of food and just like not knowing where to put food, and then also being very food insecure.
Yes.
And I think the common market was able to pivot and say, okay, in the breakdown of all of this, like very efficient, right? Or like what we've construed as efficient supply chain, the lack of localized supply chains was what hurt the most vulnerable in our society. So we were able to pivot and say, okay, we're going to create, ways for you to still access great food that is within the region, because the farmer is just 75 miles from here. We knew this was something that's important, but even more so when people that were already at risk of food insecurity were just like fundamentally like the most vulnerable, not only from a health perspective, but also from like an access perspective. One of the bigger cases that or stories that you hear when you're doing this work is like, oh, there's this farm that's 6 miles away that has perfectly good food, but like they haven't been able to sell to the school or to the corporate cafeteria. Like, so we're essentially like lowering the barrier of entry for a lot of those growers. And so when you create an economy that is based on like decreasing the risk, the planning risk, you're essentially supporting the farmer to de-risk a little bit more what they're planning, have more predictability on their income. And so you're seeing this kind of like three pieces kind of coming together as like we were formed in order to support these two sides of like, how do we create enhanced viability of your regional growers by connecting to institutions, and how to improve the health of the people in that community, right? And especially the more vulnerable ones. And even heighten with the pandemic, like how do we improve regional supply chains? So I think we're at this nexus point. At this point where like all these things are important in order for us to like, if there is, God forbid, like another event like what we had 3 years ago, are we ready, right? Have we built our growers to be able to support an instance like this again? And then even thinking about like that health aspect of that, like, are we building resilience in like the access to good food to the most vulnerable communities, and are we supporting that farmer in doing so? So it just all connects into like trying to solve this very delicate puzzle, right?
So beautifully said. My goodness, that was so beautiful. And so many problems that you're attempting to solve, which I love. Working on the Good Food and Healthcare Initiative taught me a lot about what food systems look like within very large institutions. And it is very complex. And there are a lot of different components to it. Most of us complain about the food that we have eaten in a hospital or that our loved ones have eaten in a hospital. And it probably seems like, well, why, just that makes no sense. You're in the hospital, you're sick, you're trying to get healthier. Why don't you have nutritious food? Why don't you have affordable food? Why don't you, all the things, right? And working on that project showed me all of the complexities that go along with that, right? So like one hospital is a very, very large institution. They have a lot of people to feed and a lot of different types of people to feed. Visitors, people who come to the retail cafeterias, the patients, the staff. And so that's a lot of different people's food needs. But then, right, like you and I, when we go to buy food for our families, we go to the grocery store, we buy what we need, we come home. We go to the farmer's market, we get our CSA, we come home. But a large institution like a hospital like is thinking about quantities in such large numbers for so many different people that of course they have a lot of factors to consider. And of course, unfortunately, in our Western capitalism country, like money and profit often is the leading value, right? So oftentimes these large institutions, while very good people who are making the decisions and wish that they could make decisions that are more nutritious and accessible, et cetera, are having to make decisions based on profitability and what will keep the bottom line as tight as possible, right? And so the work that you all are doing in helping to connect farmers to these large institutions, even just to show the large institutions like the hospitals and the schools and higher ed that it is possible, because that is what I saw sometimes. It's like they couldn't even get their minds around, is this even possible? Will a local farmer have enough for me to feed all the people I need to feed? And that would be a very scary position to be in day to day. I remember talking to a food worker at a children's hospital, and that would be a lot of pressure to be constantly thinking, do I have enough food to feed the children in this hospital day to day? And so that you all are thinking about how to support local farmers. And I know you're doing great work with BIPOC farmers in order to encourage more Black, Indigenous, people of color as they farm and be able to grow at a capacity that's good for them. Of course, you don't want it not to be good for the farmer to, increase what they're growing, but in a way that connects both the institution's needs and the local farmers' needs in a way that's beneficial to all, ultimately resulting in the people being fed more nutritious, more culturally appropriate, more affordable, accessible food is the ultimate goal, right? So
I mean, no, it's really nice because you're putting the angle of like what do people on the other side, right? Like, because like I can be telling the story of the farmer to the institution, but it's like so important to I think where you're getting at, and you touched on a little bit, is like, as consumers, the outcry is like, why can you do better? But like not knowing like the other side also has like, let's start with like the literacy about like procuring local, right? Like they're trying to deliver a certain number of meals a day, and they're trying to do it consistently, and they're trying to like serve a customer on that side, because again, it all kind of like ties together. Like, are you able to create the demand? Like, are we able to support, for them to create delicious recipes or like market, right? So like, that's one of the things that we do with the Common Market, is that we're able to like, okay, how can we support your efforts on marketing this like amazing, like women-owned Chicago-based sausage company, right? Like, how can we help you tell that story in a way that's compelling and that it's like advertising for the folks that are, frequenting your cafeteria on a daily basis or a couple of times a week, right? So I think having that empathy on the other side and understanding kind of like, how can we support that food service director, that sustainability director at the institution, that teacher, that farm to school specialist, like to communicate more eloquently the value of local foods, and do it in a way that it's like, it's not an all or nothing. It's like, if I think like that's kind of the part that you touched on, like, can I do this all 100% with one, like, and the answer is depends, right? I mean, my background as a food scientist, like, and as a scientist fundamentally, is like, it's never a, zero sum. It's like a all or nothing. It's like, it's all about like testing and, trial and error. And hopefully, you're able to meet people where they are on their journey. There's some people that are like, yes, I want to go from no scratch cooking to 100% scratch cooking. And so we can like, unfortunately, again, to your point earlier, like partnerships and community, like partnerships, so important, because we don't, we're not like specialists on educating like farmers or directors on like how to do their job. But we know that there's organizations that are like really good at doing this. So like, how can we connect with people that are like training food service workers to be able to be more efficient on their like kitchen operations? How can we like bring in the right resources, right, for the farmer to be able to access capital in a way that is not as overwhelming from an application perspective? And like, how do we support both sides in a way that they can like get to that end goal, right? So it's like meeting people where they are is a lot of the work in this space, because I think that's the thing. People think like, oh, I need to go from 0 to 100, and it's never the case. Like, let's start with like local apples. Let's like, maybe buy them from Illinois and Michigan. You don't need to buy them from Washington. And there's nothing wrong with Washington apples. We love our Washington apples, but like, it's not about like Xing out folks from other parts, from other food systems. It's about like, if we can get wonderful lettuce and wonderful product during our, let's prioritize that, right? And we know we there's going to be very few places that are going to be, if you're an indoor operator, great. But if you're not, like your demand or your ability to like feed people on like indoor lettuce during the winter time in the
Right.
Chicago market may be limited. So yes, of course, you'll have to source from other regions that do have that year-round capability. So I think it's just about like moving away from that all and nothing and like
I
meeting
love
people where
that.
they are.
I love that
So
so much. That's so beautiful. And that is what we've got to do, especially when we think about eating more locally and doing our part as consumers in that way. Right. I think a lot of us do think about like, well, does that mean I have to go to the farmer's market every single week and not go to my Trader Joe's? But it's not that. It's about taking steps towards it. And I always think,
but
like to make lasting change, you have to take steps that are actually going to like integrate into your life, right? So if you go to the farmer's market and buy everything, but then you don't use it or you don't cook it or you don't share it, like you're less likely to go again and spend that money again.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
go and you buy a couple things and you try things and you see if that, works out. And that's the privilege of life. And that's the privilege of, getting to try things like this is you practice. And
Yeah.
really appreciate what you said about it's not all or nothing when we're talking about this. You do what you can and you do what's right for you and your family and what will make lasting change within
That's
your
sustainable.
that's
That's
sustainable for
sustainable,
you.
right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you don't have to buy like your this one product that it's gonna be more like what is
Yeah.
sustainable to you,
Yes.
to your budget,
Yes.
that your family likes too, because like that's the
Yes.
other part that you have to be conscious as a consumer, and it's like, is it something that that nobody's gonna leave anything behind, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not just it's being very conscious and sustainable on this, and not in a judgy way, but in like a make it work for you way. So
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for saying that. What does this work personally mean to you? Like, what do you hope your contribution changes or contributes to the world? Like, just how is this personal to you?
I think I was talking with a coworker the other day about like our kids are like in uh, pre-K, kindergarten, elementary. And so just thinking of like, it would be wonderful that our kids are able to understand that like, there's more than like the grocery store brand for your yogurt, that there's actually people that are doing that in this region, that like whether it's like your farm to school or like fruit and vegetable program at your school has like to expose you to vegetables. Like I think like getting that excitement, that appreciation at that age. So my hope is, for the coming generations goes to the place that's like, I don't know a time where I didn't have local food in my school cafeteria. Like
Yeah.
that would be the hope.
Wow.
Where like, that there wasn't something there that was grown from a regional hyper local grower. And by that we're improving like the agroecology of our systems, that we're being better stewards of what we have right now, of our soils, of our land, of our waterways, with all the things that are happening right now with like the inevitable climate change, that we are being better at, that we're like regenerating as well ecosystems through this work. So that sounds grandiose, but like I think that's what I would hope. That's what I don't want to be presumptions, but I think that like that's a collective hope for people that are working in food systems, right? It's like, how can we regenerate, preserve, and really harness the tradition from our generations that have been working on this before us, and make it timeless. I think
Yes.
so. It's like a shared hope of
Yeah.
all of us that are doing this work.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I feel like sometimes the nitty gritty is so nitty and gritty that it's just like, what are we doing? And will we ever
Yeah,
see change? And that's such a beautiful vision. And that is like our collective hope. And I like hold that for myself today too, that,
yeah,
for my nieces and nephews, it would be different and they would know something different in their schools. And when they come here to eat and when they go to the farmer's market
different.
and
Yeah,
that's what you're doing, Eliana. I see that. That's the work you're doing.
that's achievable too. I think that there's another part of like, how can we make it possible that if you don't have the privilege of having a space to grow food or the systems to like get to the nearest, natural foods market, that you can still access good food.
Yes,
And I think like that's kind of what the goal is, right? Because I think that all of this good food is also inevitably associated with the halo of privilege, of high
absolutely.
cost. And so how do we democratize that a little bit more, right? Because I think like I appreciate the efforts to like make it accessible, like whatever is there. And so that's the first layer. But the second layer is how do we prioritize in that conversation the regional grower and the vulnerable communities
Yes.
part of that
Yes.
region. So
Amen. This has been such an amazing such an amazing conversation, so educational and inspiring. And I'm so grateful for you and your wisdom. And I always like to end with asking people what they're planning for dinner.
my gosh, that's a great question. Um, so you caught me off guard on that one, but I know it involves potatoes.
Okay.
Like small potatoes for sure. I was thinking of doing like you know, um, it's just a season. It's like
Yes.
carbs are so
Yes.
comforting for the
Yes.
season. So
Yes.
for sure, I'm thinking of like little potatoes. You boil
Yeah.
them in water whole, crush them, and roast them.
Oh,
And
yum.
just like
Yum.
those crispy edges, just send me. So and
Yum.
maybe some grass finished protein of sorts, pork or meat. And I am not like vegan or vegetarian, and I do appreciate well sourced animal protein from time to time. So just that, and of course your veggies. Of course you gotta have your
Of course, your
veggies.
veggies. Yes.
Yeah, my kid is into like salads as of 2 seconds ago.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so I'm excited about like putting it together. Like of course they love ranch,
Oh,
and I try to make that from scratch when I can. Buttermilk base and all your herbs and spices, and she loves it, and it's a great addition to the meal too, and it'll go well with those potatoes too. So yeah,
you have
for
literally
sure.
just given me my idea for dinner because I did not know what I was gonna do. And we used to make this salad in the summer coming back from the farmer's market that's like mixed greens with like roasted garlicky potatoes on top of the salad with pistachios and
Oh,
like
okay.
some feta and some lemon. And I'm like, oh my
Feta.
gosh, I have all of that. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. I have all of that.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, I'm
Well,
excited about now I'm getting hungry.
now
About
I'm always
yeah.
hungry, so this is even better. Thank you for the dinner inspo as well, and big
Yeah.
thanks to your kid who loves salad, who
I
really like
know.
gave all the inspo today.
But let me tell you how that started. And this is going back to the whole point of this conversation. It started with the school. Like
Really?
has been the pickiest eater since forever. And the school, like relentlessly every week, make them
Yeah,
cut their vegetables. They tell them how they're grown, what's the life, like
yeah,
the effort that comes into producing that food. And so I want that to be the opportunity for every kid.
yes, yes.
And that's how you create that love, and then that's how you create this healthier and more conscious generation for sure. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the work that you're doing having this conversation. So thank you
Oh,
for inviting me.
thank you so much, Eliana. And everyone, check out the Common Market and make sure to do what you can to eat and support your local farmers. Thank
Thank you
you.
again, Amy.